Hello, ladies and gentlemen, it's Ukrainian talk show on Pod TV. My name is Sasha Star, and we have today distinguished guest, Dr. Jonathan Lockwood. Welcome to the show, Jonathan.
Thank you, Sasha. Glad to be
Great.
here as always.
Of course. And Ivan Kucherenko from Kyiv, Ukraine. Welcome to the show, Ivan.
Hello, Sasha. Hello, Jonathan. Glad to be here as well.
Great to have you. And you have a movie for us to look at?
Yeah, a really tragic one.
Yeah, let's start with that.
Monday morning, a Russian missile strike. Dozens killed, over 100 wounded. Rescue operations are still underway. People are trapped under the rubble. A Russian missile hit a hospital building. This is Okhmatzyt, one of the most important hospitals in Ukraine and our region. Here, children with cancer are treated, the most complex surgeries are performed, and patients recover from the most severe injuries. The building where children receive dialysis is destroyed. Passers-by, doctors, and rescuers are all working together to clear the rubble. A maternity hospital was also damaged, as well as ordinary houses. Kyiv, Kryvyi Rih, Dnipro, and cities of the Donetsk region all came under the mass missile attack. Russia knows exactly where the missiles hit. Russia must be held accountable for this terror. Every leader who supported Ukraine today supported life. Everyone who condemns Russia, who helps us save people and repel Russian attacks, brings the return of peace closer. Condemnations alone cannot stop the terror. We need our partners to take strong steps. Terrorists must never prevail anywhere in the world. Russian terror must be defeated. Nowhere in the world should innocent life be a target.
Yeah, very powerful presentation. Was horrible day. Let's talk really honestly what it's all about. In my opinion, first, and then of course your opinion. In my opinion, the Putin has a model of the world where Kiev and Ukraine is a part of Russian Empire. He will be distracted from that theory only by his death. There is nothing else will work out. So, in his opinion, Ukraine and Kiev, of course, it's nothing but rebellion against Russia's empire. And that rebellion has to be absolutely quashed and absolutely destroyed, any possible means. No other country, whether it's China or the Western countries or anything like that, will change his mind or talk to him about anything. Even some peace proposals which are being now floated around, and Orban went to Kiev and then Moscow and then China. I don't know where he is now. It's not serious because there is no proposal. There is it's just a mechanism for Russia just to play for time, just to get to November elections. It's all what's now on their mind. And you know what? If it would be just, okay, small skirmishes here and there on the front lines, okay. But now with what Putin's doing, especially right a day before the NATO meetings in the United States, there is much more behind it. It's just a signal that you are so divided, all the West and even United States itself, and that I really don't care what you think and what you want and whatever. I will do my thing to send a message to Ukraine. Give up, resign. There is no hope. And this is a very serious situation, because if nothing can stop Putin, indeed, then why Ukrainians will have to continue to sacrifice hundreds and thousands of their lives, especially children and so on? Well, the answer is not to allow Ukraine to lose its identity, to lose its statehood, and that's definitely worth something. But how much? That's a question, and I'm not a proponent of at all cost make some kind of a peaceful situation with Putin. But if you don't do that, then you have to have an incredible reply to what just happened. You have to stop short of having missiles hitting the Moscow, the Petersburg, the anything, whatever you can do. If you cannot do that, then probably it's a good policy just to surrender. I'm so upset about this, what's happened, and lack of response that I'm just asking myself, okay, so then where do we go from there? Jonathan, let's
My
hear
turn.
words of wisdom, please.
Well, we have already seen that Putin's peace plan amounts to nothing less than essentially an ultimatum to Ukraine to surrender. I mean, there is no real choice there. He says either surrender or continue. We will continue this attack. And it is interesting also that the latest reports show that the ratio of Russian casualties to Ukrainian casualties has been even higher than reported. So the situation is even worse for Russia than we had first estimated. So now, as I would borrow from Winston Churchill's reasoning and his analysis of Russian behavior, that there's nothing that the Russians respect more than strength, and nothing that they have more contempt for than weakness. Surrendering to Russia would be the ultimate display of weakness. They would have nothing. They would not respect Ukraine for agreeing to an unequal peace plan, or if they certainly would not have any more respect for NATO. It would not prevent war in the future or subsequent wars, because a number of Putin's advisors and spokespeople have indicated their desire to take even more beyond Ukraine, to reestablish the Russian Empire. And Russia sees Ukraine as an integral part of the original Russian Empire. They will never reconcile themselves to the permanent loss of Ukraine. They must be compelled to accept it. In the short term, the way to do that is for Ukraine to inflict a decisive operational defeat, which would involve the isolation and retaking of Crimea. That is the true center of gravity of this conflict. Once that is done, then Ukraine can, with presumably what will be an emboldened Western alliance, seeing the possibility of actually achieving a meaningful victory, being able to reinforce its eastern front, gain air superiority over eastern Ukraine, and then subsequently drive the Russians out of Ukraine. And basically, that is the only path for Ukrainian survival at this point. Ukraine still controls its own destiny. They have to, in my view, choose the proper moment, hopefully no later than the end of this summer or early fall, to execute a decisive operational counterstroke that will isolate Crimea and effectively return it to Ukrainian control. That will be an unmistakable military defeat for Russia. They won't be able to explain it away or say we really meant to do that. No, they will be compelled. A peace must be won on the battlefield, as paradoxical as that may sound.
Jonathan, I agree with you, but I have a strange feel that these attacks, similar to what Russians just did 2 days ago, they are playing very important mechanism of functioning of Ukrainian leadership. So here are options. Okay, we can start at some point the attack against and isolate Crimea. That's one option. The other option is to try to find some kind of not even peaceful, but at least to terminate the armistice solution. And the third option is just do nothing in order, because the peace situation is simply impossible because of the Russian demands. So then the second option to attack against and isolating Crimea is trying to do nothing or as little as possible in order not infuriate Russians to continue this type of attacks. So even if there is no armistice, at least this horrible attacks would stop for some time, and so on. So this is, and if you do an attack against Crimea and trying to isolate Crimea, it rolls out to other options, strangely enough, except one was about armistice. It does not include, actually, that can even bring Russia close to that solution, especially that Russia is, as we know, in a horrible economic situation when there is all trade with China, using yuan as exchange currency. All this fell apart, and Putin even asked his close advisors, as Nabiullina and Kostin, he's the head of VTB bank, second largest bank in Russia, asking what the way out of it, and they told him there is no way out of it, just like that. So it's maybe one of the reasons why he's trying to enforce his hand, because he's on one hand he wants to play for time to get into November election in US, and on the other hand the Russia fell apart as a result of lack of.
If Putin is indeed counting upon a victory by former President Trump in November as his path to victory in Ukraine, for being to be handed a victory in that fashion, he is whistling in the dark, because former President Trump, should he become President Trump again in November, is not going to willingly play into Russia's hands and sabotage the NATO alliance. Contrary to the fears of our NATO allies, former President Trump will not do that should he become president in November. He will probably pull a strategic surprise on Vladimir Putin, and because part of his proposal was that if Russia did not agree to come to the peace table, that there would be more weapons and reinforcements sent to Ukraine. He would, in fact, up the stakes, which is not something that not many people realize. So he does have a whip hand. He does have a means of coercion. And keep in mind also the thing that I've been suggesting, that the United States and NATO should begin work on increase in the very short term, bolstering their ballistic missile defenses in the theater, and using that as a prelude to constructing what I call the worldwide strategic defense matrix, WISDOM, which would have as its goal the neutralization of Russia's nuclear arsenal, as well as that of China, Iran, and North Korea. It is the perfect asymmetric response to what Putin is doing.
Yeah, and hopefully it's already underway, although we don't know about that.
We do not know. We do not know everything that goes on behind the scenes.
Yeah,
you can suppose that there, and just as we did not know, for example, that certain weapon systems from the West were already arriving in Ukraine faster than was being publicized in the West.
yes,
It's just like a game of poker. It's like a game of poker. It's like, how 7-card stud works. First 2 cards down, next 4 up that you can see, and the last card down.
Yeah.
So we know what we can see. We do not know what the whole cards are. And that is the element of mystery. And that is why we have intelligence services.
Exactly. Ivan, I would like to ask you a question concerning the visit of Orban to Kyiv, Moscow, and China. before he arrived to Kiev, Mr. Yermak said that we did a lot of hard work to make his visit a reality. Now, in the absence of any real peace proposal, why would Yermak work so hard and even announced it?
I don't know actually. I
That
don't
says it
know
all right there. It's like,
yeah. But I see what I see, and you're right, Sasha, that the real problem is in lack of response, because Russians, as Jonathan said, the words of Winston Churchill, they understand only the power, and what they're doing, they're increasing the stakes. And I think that this is some kind of plan when Orban came to Kiev to make some kind of peace negotiations. And after he left Kiev, Russia struck that devastating attack on Kiev with the missile, with direct hit of missile into a child hospital, showing that they have no mercy and they're really mad, and they will go and strike more and more, and they have enough missiles to destroy everything in Ukraine, even despite the air defense systems provided to us. And after that, what is remarkable that and this seems like a real plan of Putin, and Orban is playing with his plan, that Orban made a message that see, in this war there is no end, and that Russia will continue to kill Ukrainians, and that some peaceful way should be found, and I'm a great peacekeeper. I'm going on my peaceful missions to Ukraine, to Moscow, to China, and to find some peaceful way. What is remarkable that in the same time as Orban said, a lot of Ukrainian influencers and opinion leaders, they made the similar messages, like this war should be ended, there would be no winning side, that let's stop politicians killing each other, and other that stuff. When a lot of opinion leaders make the similar messages with the one narrative, that this war has no end, so that Russia will continue killing, and let's look for some peace at least. That makes that this is another kind of special Russian psychological operation to make Ukraine go on peace negotiations on Russian positions, but would actually to sign a capitulation, to give Russia not only those territories they've already captured, but other territories which they still can't capture, like the rest of Luhansk and Donetsk region, which they can capture for more than 14 years, actually, starting from 2014 when they were stopped. So the plan for me is quite obvious, and I think that Russia is also preparing social opinion that as soon as they will decrease their demands, Ukraine should accept them as soon as possible, because in their opinion it probably will show that they're really going to make some peace. And okay, we don't want the other parts of Kherson, region, or we don't want Kharkiv region. Let's give us only those territories we've already captured. So they're just preparing for such kind of plan. And lack of response from United States, from NATO on their another atrocity is quite disturbing, and this shows that any authoritarian regime, any dictator in this world can do whatever he wants, and no one will not be able to do nothing against them. It opens a chain reaction for other dictators in the world that they have power to do whatever they want. And what is remarkable, I've read a recent analysis from Forbes, and during that war, Russian oligarchs, Russian billionaires, they increased their stakes for more than $11 billion. And for instance, not all of those billionaires are currently under the sanctions of United States. For instance, Vagit Alikperov, who is owner of Lukoil and who is a great taxpayer and is supplying Russian regime with oil. He's not under the sanctions of United States, because for someone it's just a business. It's not a war. It's not Russian atrocities. It's just a business, and it's okay to make business with the Russians and allow them to earn even more and more money and not paying for their war crimes.
Well, you see, with a visit now from Mr. Modi to Russia from India, and contacts, very close contacts between Russia and China, and it seems to me that Russia was able to create some kind of coalition. People call it sometimes the world South, although China is not necessarily South and so on. But there has to be some kind of a name. Basically, name unites all regimes, all countries who are anti-American, anti-Western, and so on. So it doesn't matter. They are miles apart from each other. There is no common either language, religion, or culture, or anything. However, the one common denominator is a hate for Western and United States way of life, and so on. Now, Jonathan, I would like to ask you, you remember a brief civil war in Spain in the 30s, around
1937, yes, Spanish Civil War, 37-38. Yes.
Yeah, and there were international brigades who were fighting in Spain, including Russian, Soviet Union brigade, and many other countries. Why Ukraine couldn't come up with some kind of a mechanism to create international brigades who would operate in Ukraine and maybe even...
That is an interesting concept, and it may well emerge, short of what I have been foreseeing or projecting, if Ukraine is not able to or unwilling to execute a counteroffensive that severs control of Crimea from Russia. If they are unable to do that, then something that you suggest, the recruiting of or the welcoming of international brigades, such as
welcoming, I like more than recruiting.
Welcoming foreign volunteers, such as the Lincoln Brigade during the Spanish Civil War.
Yes,
there's a possibility. And it is still an open question as to how much. There are still NATO members who have not yet increased their share of their GDP defense spending up to the level of 2%, which, again, the increasingly likely re-election of President Trump to the U.S. presidency may indirectly, and it's having an effect on NATO's attitude. They are recognizing that they may be more and more on their own. There have been articles talking about how NATO members are trying to Trump-proof the situation, so that even if President Trump does come in as reelected for a second term, and is putting pressure on NATO to increase their share of defense spending, which is what he has been wanting all along, then this will be a very interesting situation. NATO will be taking greater responsibility for their own defense because they recognize that they cannot necessarily count on the United States to shoulder a larger than expected share of the burden for NATO's defense. They were able to do that during the Cold War, but then again, the United States' economic superiority was much greater over the Soviet Union during the Cold War, and there are other factors at work now where the United States cannot necessarily continue to provide an outsized share of the defense for NATO. So it's a
very simple solution. Why NATO wouldn't kick out the members who are not paying its 2%? Just kick them out and let them be on their own.
Well, that you would have to take a look at which member. Now, it's not the members who are if you take a look at it, the members who are on the eastern flank of NATO. They're not the ones who are not contributing 2%. There might be some in the interior. I'd have to take a very closer look to see which specific NATO members are not paying their full 2% share.
I would start with Hungary.
Yeah, that is the most obvious one. Mm-hmm. And Hungary is it's landlocked. It does not occupy a great position of great strategic significance, other than the fact that it's pretty close to Ukraine, and it would be a nice backup for Ukraine if they needed it. If Hungary could be persuaded to be more enthusiastic in its defense of Ukraine.
And it's unfortunately we are talking about only Hungarian leadership,
right?
Because 80% of Hungarians, they absolutely fear and hate Russians.
And they have reason to. The 1956 Hungarian Revolution that was suppressed by the Soviet Union by Khrushchev during that period. That's very much within the historical memory of Hungary. So that's not it. You are right. It's primarily the Hungarian leadership that is the sticking point here. But in any case, as events continue to move towards a decisive political event in November with the U.S. presidential election, which will have very significant implications, there is still, I still maintain that a decisive event is still within Ukraine's control. If the Ukrainian military, in conjunction with their political leadership, can choose the proper moment in which to use their available weaponry and attain superiority sufficiently to inflict a decisive operational defeat on Russia.
Ivan. Sorry, John. Please continue. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, that's okay.
Oh, Ivan, I have a question to you. Isn't it psychologically extremely difficult for Ukrainians to follow their leader, Vladimir Zelensky, who on one side he's talking about continuing fight against Russia, and his branch of government headed by Yermak organizing visits of Orban and talking about peace. And how you can really at the same time to prepare the attack to isolate Crimea, and at the same time discuss so stupid really peace proposals, which are not peace proposals. They're all kind of ultimatums rather. How Ukrainian people feel about this dissonance, in my opinion?
You understand that every war ends with peace negotiations.
Not in case of 1945. there were no peace negotiations. When there was a conference in Tehran in 1943, which was still far away from victory, there were no discussions how to make peace with Hitler. And Yalta,
Um,
1945, same thing.
Unfortunately, we are fighting alone in this war. There are no Americans, there is no Europeans except of some few volunteers who joined the International Legion in Ukraine. There is no NATO troops in Ukraine, and it's not this war is not a world war yet, but it can change the world war at any time, and no one knows how this war will change the world war. So, in case Ukrainian or NATO troops were approaching Moscow, then probably it would be easier to talk about the end of this war and not to consider any peace negotiations and any possibilities to make peace on conditions which are acceptable for Ukraine. Those conditions which Russia is offering, which Hungary Orban is offering, with China is offering, their Russians ones, and they're not acceptable. But discussing any possibilities to make peace negotiations and finding someone who will be able to deliver a message to Putin that he will not conquer Ukraine and that Ukrainians will struggle until the end. This is an option, because we need some messengers. Macron failed in making Putin understand the reality. Biden failed. Other Western politicians failed. Maybe Orban will be successful. But what we see from his peaceful trip, that he's just trying to play with Russia and support their peaceful plan. It doesn't mean that Ukrainians will accept it. And at the same time, while politicians are discussing the ways of any peace negotiations, Ukrainian soldiers are making their great job on the battlefield. They're fighting. They're trying to stop the Russian aggression. Ukrainian air defense, yesterday they've shot down the majority of Russian missiles, actually, because if the majority of Russian missiles was not shot down, then the consequences of that strike would be much more devastating, and would be much more than 30 people dead, which are already dead after that strike yesterday on Ukraine, and hundreds of people being injured. So we have no way until we don't have NATO fighting together with us, until we don't have United States, American troops fighting with us, then we also should act in any direction, seeking for possibilities to end this war.
Here's my difficulties is that this approach is reasonable, and in fact I cannot argue about it for several reasons. But at the same time, how you can prepare the attack to isolate Crimea is this two, one direction is here and another one is there, and I just don't see them implementing at the same time and working together and so on. Because
it would have to be sequential. You would have to isolate Crimea first, cut it off, and then the Ukrainian military would have to pivot and redeploy eastward in order to reinforce once they have, and where NATO could, or certain nations could, you could invite certain NATO forces or certain NATO support troops to help rebuild Crimea, to help restore and stabilize it. That would free up Ukrainian forces in order to redeploy to the eastern portion of Ukraine, where presumably with increased quality of Ukrainian both air defenses as well as air forces, the F-16s and other types of aircraft being deployed there, that would enable Ukraine to gain air superiority over the eastern front in Ukraine. Now there is no, I don't believe it would be logistically possible for Ukraine to simultaneously engage in a counteroffensive in the eastern front and at the same time cut off the Crimea. It would, in my opinion, it would have to be done sequentially, with Crimea being the first operation executed.
Absolutely. And I don't see really how much mileage Ukraine is getting out of all those discussions of peace proposals when it's obvious where the Russia stands, and nothing except, Jonathan, as you said, that Russians understand only one thing, is the power. So if there is no demonstration of power, a real power, not just talking about demonstration, but actually inflict certain damages in Russia, that could bring Russia maybe change their mind and saying, okay, well, we'll take you this and we'll give you that and so on. And then there'll be some kind of, not ideal, but at least some kind of playable situation. Because what's now is enormous resources, psychological, first of all, not financial or material, but psychological resources are being spent by Ukraine on discussions of this shitty peace proposals and so on. It's very unfortunate. Now, Ivan, I would like to mention something. When you're complaining that NATO is not fighting and Ukraine is alone and all that stuff, remember the beginning of this war in February of 22, there was absolutely nothing except a few stingers were available to Ukrainians and their heroism, and they increased military prowess, change the approach of West to this Ukrainian war. And they started to get more ammunition, more weapons. After Bucha, they brought the HIMARS, which proved to be very effective. And then many other type of weapons and ammunition. So it's some kind of, the more you do, the more the West does. The more you do, the more the West follows. It's some kind of a two-way process, because if they see that, okay, they discuss, it's already well more than a year ago when it was discussion about Ukrainian counter-offensive and so on. It didn't go anywhere for various reasons and so on. And now it's already middle of summer now. It's soon the middle of July. And Zelensky is talking about that he created 14 new brigades that are ready to start the Ukrainian offensive. However, they are not completely equipped. They lack certain type of
and in any
even to talk about it, say I need this and that in next 2 weeks, please. And then if it's not there, then there is no attack. There is no, okay, Putin, come here, okay, take here's Dnipro or whatever else you need. Make it possible, because right now the West is getting frustrated too, because it obviously delivers certain type of ammunition and weapons and so on, financial help and so on. And where is Ukraine is today? Same as 3 months ago, 6 months ago, 9 months ago, 12 months ago, 15 months ago. There is no progress. It's kind of a stagnation complete. And with this situation, I don't know, in my opinion, okay, it's easy for me to say because I'm in Canada and I'm not taking a risk. Although if I would be even 10 years younger, I would definitely be in Ukraine, especially what this scumbags are doing with my city of Odessa, but not only my city. I love Kyiv just as well, and all other Ukrainian cities. Maybe it's better to go va-bank, so to speak, and start the offensive against Crimea. And at least you have a lot to gain. To lose, You lost already so much and are losing every day already. So the protracted war is definitely not benefiting Ukraine, not in any prospects at all. That's why I'm just complaining. I'm very frustrated, but I think there will
And
be.
the thing is, we are in the moment. We can, if we were be able to look at this in historical hindsight, like for example, we were looking at the Second World War. A lot of people look at the Second World War. Why didn't the Allies do this, or why didn't the Nazis do that? That's because they had the benefit of hindsight. You have perfect intelligence after the fact. But when you are in the moment, when you are trying to penetrate the fog of war, when you are trying to grope your way forward and figure, okay, I don't have all the information I need, but I do know what my strategic situation is. I know what I must do. I know what political events are coming up. And so I have a closing window of opportunity. And if looking at it from the Ukrainian perspective, then I have a closing window of opportunity here. And yeah, I may not have a high chance of success, but even a moderate chance of success is better than not taking the chance at all. So this would be a strategic gamble on Ukraine's part to undertake an offensive to cut off Crimea, but is one that I believe is absolutely necessary if Ukraine is going to force Russia to realize that it cannot win this war. And right now, they have to be dissuaded by the infliction of a decisive defeat on the battlefield, and they have to pick their moment, their place, and the time to do so.
And even this yesterday's attack, so many people were killed, innocent civilians, children. That would warrant for Ukraine to do a very serious damage to Russian, I wouldn't say Russian hospitals or anything like that, but at least to Russian military or civilian targets which are involved in, for example, oil production, procurement, and do something drastic, something that Ukraine never done before. But again, if Ukrainians afraid that it would escalate even further attacks of Russians against civilians and so on, it's very, very tough situation for Ukraine. Really, really tough. I just waiting for this summit in the United States of NATO. And
Now, by the way, NATO, there have already been statements by NATO members that the Ukraine's path towards eventual NATO membership is, in their words, irreversible. That they are basically saying that inevitably Ukraine will become a member of NATO. Now, the question is, under what circumstances do you do that? Well, you cannot technically do it while Ukraine is still involved in war with Russia. So the only path towards rapid entry of Ukraine into NATO is for Ukraine to compel a ceasefire, to compel an armistice with Russia. The only path to doing that, given Putin's attitude, is you have to inflict a decisive operational defeat on Russian forces and a decisive loss. And the most readily available means for doing that is to cut off the Crimea and retake it. That is the only path that I see in the near to intermediate term. Retake the Crimea, cut off Russia, concentrate your forces to do that, and then pivot and appeal to NATO for more forces, more weapons, so that they can consolidate the Eastern Front and present Russia with an unwinnable situation.
Ivan, tell me, what do you think is Zelensky and Ukrainian leadership is capable of doing that and willing to do that?
Of course, we have a will, but we need an assistance. And when Zelensky says that we don't have enough weapons and that 14 brigades are still not receiving the weapons which are promised 1 year ago for Ukrainian counteroffense, and we still don't have F-16s in our skies, which were promised to be in Ukraine by the beginning of the summer, then are we really capable to recapture Crimea being on our own? This will mean that more and more Ukrainians will die. Now, the count of casualties is 6-1. On every 6 Russian soldiers, 1 Ukrainian soldier dies, and without weapons, attacking such a high militarized territory like Crimea it's actually a great military base, and it was turned into a great military base starting from the annexation from 2014, when President Obama allowed Russia actually to penetrate the international law and to capture Crimea and to turn it into a military base. And if we will go there without weapons, without enough supplies, then these numbers will be opposite. On one that Russian soldier will be 6 Ukrainian soldiers dead, and we have much less population in Ukraine than in Russia, and less mobilization potential. So we can't attack the citadel with arrows and spikes. We need more weapons. We need F-16s. We need long-range missiles, and we need Taurus missiles and all weapons that Western countries, what NATO can provide us with. And after that, we will talk about getting back Crimea, not before.
So maybe it's right now with the summit of NATO and United States. I think it's scheduled for 2 days, today and tomorrow, and maybe some Thursday, maybe some continuation. Why wouldn't Zelensky, of course, not in the Wall Street Journal or New York Times, but explain to NATO leaders in the United States, of course, that provided that he will have such and such weapons and quantity and quality of these weapons, to spell it out, in case of we will receive it by, say, August 1st, the August 15th attack is imminent. What do you think?
I don't know. Luckily, I don't know the real plans of our political leadership, of our military leadership, and I hope that they have specific strategic plans, and that on these negotiations in Washington, NATO anniversary, actually will be made some specific decisions to help Ukraine repel Russian aggression and to hit Russia from occupied territories, at least to hit them from Crimea. Because I agree with Jonathan that this may lead to some unpredictable consequences in Russia. But another reason why Ukraine is not being provided by all the necessary weapons and equipment, that someone in United States and in other Western countries are afraid of unpredictable consequences in Russia. They're afraid. Some Democrats, they are afraid of Russia to collapse. They're afraid of this uncertainty and these different new governments which will appear on such a great territory, because it's also will make China more stronger, because they will grab all those countries and make them the Chinese protectorates, actually. So it's for someone in the United States, it's okay to have Russia as a thug, as a criminal, but not as a collapsed state with different countries, which is much more harder to control and to predict their actions. And that's the reason why we are not being provided with enough military help, because enough military help with will make a quicker defeat of Russia, and quicker defeat of Russia will probably lead to some unpredictable consequences.
Well, what you are describing is what during the Cold War, the Soviet leadership from time to time would describe as what they call the crisis of capitalism. Their stated fear was that as the socialist revolution continued to gain successes throughout the world, that there would come a point when the United States leadership, the capitalists, in a last desperate attempt to retrieve the situation, would unleash nuclear war in an desperate effort to reverse the tide of the socialist revolution. And so this was the rationale behind the Soviet Union's declaring its nuclear warfighting or survival war winning doctrine. Not that they were capable of actually doing it, but for political reasons, for political survival, the Soviet Union had to declare that it was ready to fight, survive, and win a nuclear war with the United States. So here we have the reverse. We have the leadership in the United States fearing the potential that Russia, facing imminent defeat in a Russian-Ukrainian war, might, in a last desperate attempt to retrieve the situation, lash out with nuclear weapons and escalate wildly. So you would have a Russian crisis and Putin, for his part, has been doubling down on that threat, using the implied threat of the use of its nuclear arsenal to apply both political, military, and psychological pressure on the West, waving that fear of nuclear escalation in our faces. And which is, again, why in the short term, I recommend the bolstering of ballistic missile defenses for both NATO and the United States, and in the longer term, the establishment of the worldwide strategic defense matrix.
Excellent, Jonathan. Always like your suggestion, Ivan. I'm thankful to you for your optimism, and hopefully we'll have great news from this NATO summit. And I hope to see you Friday, same place, same time. Thank you very much, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Slava Ukraini.
Героям слава.